All right, joining us from the Las Vegas Review Journal, Adam Hill. You can check him out on Twitter at Adam Hill LVRJ. It throws me off every time, Review Journal and RJ. Adam Hill joining us now on the Autumn Windbags. How you doing, Adam?
I'm good. Also, the three L's in a row throw
Adam.
people. Yeah, what's up, man? Yeah, that throws people off. I probably should have picked a better name when I started my Twitter handle, but what are you gonna do? So we roll.
Well, you only have the second worst Twitter handle on this show because Rory's Twitter handle is literally ROR and then like 7 underscores in a row. I'm not kidding.
I don't even know how many. That's what's crazy about it.
I don't know. I have to copy and paste it from Twitter every time I put it in like our bios and like our YouTube and stuff. Like, I'm not gonna remember that. Like, how
Yeah, that's worse.
It's terrible.
It's amazing. I realized I was posting some pretty fucked up shit on Twitter, and I didn't want anyone to be able to find me.
Oh, you one of those? Oh, Rory's a net banger.
Just come up with a second account then, right?
Yeah, get a burner account.
I know, man. Look, it all spiraled. This wasn't supposed to happen.
Get a KD account like he has.
That's why you never retweet our shit. It's because you're
straight up.
You're hiding in plain sight on Twitter. You know the whole point of Twitter is to reach people and have
fuck.
them see you, not to hide.
Yeah, I gotta start from scratch.
I thought the whole point of Twitter was people just harassing me all day, every day. That's fun.
I think the three L's were for the Raiders because they bunch them in threes too.
It's been ugly lately.
Yeah, what's up with I mean, it's the you'd be making a lot more money than all of us put together if you knew the actual answer to this question. But what is with the late season collapses these last 2 seasons? Is there like something specific?
I mean, I don't think there's anything specific. Like, there's nothing you notice, sitting at the games and watching them and saying, what's going on here. And listen, is it a collapse? I mean, they've had a couple of games that they could have won, that could have gone either way. Last game was a miracle to lose it. So I don't want to say there's anything like maybe that was in common for both of the seasons. I'll say this, like when they were 6-3, I was doing an interview and somebody said, why is this team so good? And my answer was, are they? Like I never was totally blown away, but if you look back, you beat the Saints, one of the best teams in the league. You beat the Chiefs, the best team in the league. You're competing with some of these really good teams, and it just for some reason, whatever it is, like on certain days they were able to come through and get wins and look at their best, and other days they just weren't very good. But even at 6-3, I never thought they were that good. I thought they were just kind of overperforming what they were, and now they fall apart down the stretch. Fall to 7-8. They have a chance to get back to 8-8, but I just think that's what they are. I think they're an 8-8 team. I think that's what they were at the start of the year. I think that's what they are now.
Well, if it was just their defense, it'd be an 0-16 team. Like, it's like not just bad, but like historically so terrible. What did the players think of Paul Guenther? Like, did they like him, or were they happy to see him go?
So these questions are really weird this year. Because we're not in the locker room anymore.
Yeah.
So like last year, I was in the locker room after every game, after every practice. It's 45 minutes required that the players just kind of hang out with us in the media, which I'm sure they love. But you really got good senses. Like you would sit there and just to go behind the scenes a little bit, like what it's like to cover the team. Like you would sit there and just talk to guys for 45 minutes. We talked a lot about, I started watching certain TV shows only because certain players just wanted to talk about those shows. And then you would like those relationships, right?
Need your icebreaker.
Yeah, well, and then a couple guys found out that our background a little bit. I covered UFC for 12 years, and a couple guys found out about that, and like they would literally, as soon as they had to talk to media, would just find me and like, all right, let's talk UFC for 20 minutes and kill my time here.
Yeah.
Richie Incognito being like the main one. Richie Incognito just loves UFC and would just come
Go
over
figure.
and just talk. And so when you're having those conversations, you get those off the record, like, oh, by the way, while we're talking about this fight, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this guy? What's going on here? And you get so much better of a sense of what was going on with the team. And this year, it's all through Zoom. Everything's through Zoom. Every once in a while, you'll get a player hit you up and be like, hey, I want to talk about something or whatever. But like those conversations, those daily conversations about what's going on the team just don't happen anymore. So I'm just prefacing your question of like, what do they feel? Last year, I can tell you that, I mean, they loved him as a person for sure. And I think they trusted in John Gruden's trust in him, if that makes sense to you. Like, John Gruden thinks this guy's great.
Trusted him by proxy.
We trust John Gruden, so that's our guy. So we're going to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there was an element at some point of, hey, look, we keep doing the same things over and over, and they're not working. And, Paul Guenther was put in a bad position of, I think, some questionable draft picks that were supposed to be a lot better, some free agent signings that didn't quite work out to the level that they had hoped. Like the personnel just wasn't there. But you do need as a coach to figure out how to put your personnel in the right place. And the key of all of this, I think you just look at Jonathan Abram. Like you don't have to look much further than how they treat Jonathan Abram. Jonathan Abram was brought in as a first round safety. You expect if you're a coach, you're a defensive coordinator, that you get a safety in the first round out of the SEC, that he's going to be a beast that can do anything.
Yeah.
And he's just going to take over. Well, obviously he doesn't play last year. He comes back this year, and they find out pretty quickly that he is atrocious in pass coverage. He can't cover anybody. He gets lost all the time. But when they play him close to the line of scrimmage, and they're just like, dude, go get the ball. Just go find the ball and get it. Like you're a little kid again.
Yeah.
Jonathan Abram's really good at that. At times, he can be effective. He can make plays. And so you need as a coach, and this is a very micro level example, but you need as a coach to figure out those types of things. Where are my guys good? Where do they have strengths? And how can I put them in the best position to make plays? And I think that might have been maybe a little bit of the downfall of Paul Gunther's like, I'm just going to run my system.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do what I do. And if these players can't figure it out, well, that's on them. Well, in the end, it's on you. Like you need to figure out how to make those players better. And I don't think he did that.
And I'm not totally sold. Like you're right, but I'm not totally sold that these players are just bad. Because like, okay, that could explain, the draft picks, young guys. They were great in college, but how are they going to do in the pros? Sink or swim. But it doesn't explain like Corey Littleton sucking. Like
It kind of does. It kind of does. Listen, Corey Littleton is an unbelievable coverage linebacker. But then when you put him in a role of like, hey, go play linebacker in a traditional form, that's really not his best thing. Now, he also, I think, was injured quite a bit, which was kind of hidden a little bit under the radar. He still tried to play through it. He wasn't at his best. But I think that they were putting him in roles that he wasn't really accustomed to. And then Nick Kwiatkowski, who has been pretty good for most of the year, goes down early in the season for a couple games. And then they kind of move Littleton into that role for some periods of time. That wasn't working. But you're right. Like, again, you go and get Corey Littleton, who you look at the last couple of years, he's been an elite coverage linebacker.
I was doing backflips in the hallway when they made that signing.
Great. And I will tell you that, his old defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips, is kind of, using that as his in to try to get the job of, I know how to use Corey Littleton. You've got him. I know how to use him really well. Bring me in and I'll show you how to make him effective. So I know that's part of what his pitch is, to become the defensive coordinator, but he believes that there's roles that he could play that he could be a lot better. But I just think that, they never really found that mix of what Corey Littleton does well and what the defense is asking of him, and to put him in those right positions. Like, I think that's another example of they just didn't understand how to use him. And those things happen over time. And again, it's not excuses. Everybody had to deal with it.
Yeah.
He comes in, they don't see him for a whole summer. I think I remember a point in training camp where we were like, we asked John Gruden, like, what do you think about Corey Littleton? And then he's like, I haven't met him. I don't know. So it was a really weird offseason to try to get those guys in.
Well, it's also like we have to hope that Paul Gunther was the problem and these players are good, because like, think about it. Like, they're not going to like, they're all like either first round draft picks or expensive free agents. Like, I'm not going to give up on Damon Arnett first round. I'm not going to give up on Abram, a first rounder. I'm not going to give up on Clelin Ferrell. Like, they're not going to give up on these high priced free agents. Like, they're not going to like you can't just get rid of these guys. It just doesn't make business sense. They're not going to do it this early, right?
Yeah. So
you have to hope that Paul Gunther was the problem, because you're not going to do a makeover of this defense. It's all first rounders and high priced free agents.
You're right. And that's a scary thing for them trying to go into this offseason. But, I think there are things like, look at, and listen, the Miami offense is atrocious, but they played pretty well for 3 quarters. Now, they weren't ready for Fitzpatrick. They obviously had everything scouted with Tua. They were ready for a left-handed quarterback. They were ready for his tendencies. They played really well. So I thought they were schemed into playing pretty well. And again, if you want to say Miami's offense sucks, which they do, and Tua didn't play well, fine. But what terrible offense has the Raiders been able to take advantage of? None. So there's some progress to Marinelli and what he was doing and putting them in some better spots. But you're right. Like, they need to figure out what to do with these guys. And I think that would involve, okay, you want to use Jonathan Abram, that's fine. He has to play closer to the line. Now you have to bring in a more traditional safety to play alongside of him that can cover some of those things on the back end of the defense, and then let Abram go make plays. I still have pretty high hopes for Trayvon Mullen, despite the 4 flag game a couple weeks ago. I think he can be a really good player. I still think Arnett can be pretty good, although the miscommunication with Isaiah Johnson on the last play against Miami was unforgivable because even if you don't understand what you're doing in that play, like, why are you playing the short flat when if they want to throw a 5-yard pass, go right ahead.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Like,
that's basic football.
It
what
literally
are you
required a
covering?
Hail Mary and a penalty. They
Right.
got it.
But also
They got it.
Arnett, if he didn't understand the coverage, in your mind, you're like, hey, I've got a safety behind me, which he did. Isaiah Johnson was supposed to be there and he wasn't. But even if that's the case, why on earth are you covering the flat? Like, in your mind, you have to say, oh, this is what they want me to do. I probably shouldn't do this. I should probably back up because if they want to throw, there's 19 seconds. If they want to throw a 5-yard out, say it takes 4 or 5 seconds. Okay, now there's 14 or 13 seconds left and you've gained 5 yards. Good for you. Like, that's the right
How
play. So why are you covering the flat?
how long did that ball hang in the air for you? I thought it was like an eternity. That ball was in there for so long.
So I think it's a different scenario, like being there. So I didn't even remember, but a couple of the other reporters in the press box told me that as I'm watching the play go, I was actually watching that side of the field. Like, I was looking at that side, and I see Arnett just stop and let him go behind him, and I see Fitzpatrick look that way and go to throw it. So I didn't actually see Fitzpatrick throw it. I just saw receiver wide open, and I go, oh boy.
I saw Fitzpatrick looking at the back end zone with his head
Yeah,
doing
he's
a
looking
180.
And I was just laughing. Like, I just so people know, I think there's no cheering in the press box, and I'm not a Raiders fan anyway. I couldn't care less about the outcome of the game. But it was just more of like oh boy, how are you gonna let this guy? Like, you're just gonna let a guy run down the field when there's 19 seconds? Like, okay, I guess that's what you're doing now. So it was just a reaction. And you're right, it was just hanging there. And I was like, wait, did he throw it to him? Like, where? Oh, there's the ball. Okay, completion. Crazy. And everything had to go wrong, as you said. Not only do they have to get wide open, not only do they have to catch the pass, they also have to get the penalty, because without the penalty, they're still in some trouble there. They still have to complete another
It was
pass.
like the 40. It was the 40, right? The 41-yard line or
It
something
was
like
the 41-yard line, and they weren't going to
Mhm.
let Sanders kick it from 60. So they would have had to run another play. And if you tackle somebody in bounds, the game's over. Everything had to go wrong there. And you
Yeah,
could
and it
tell the
did.
frustration. Yep.
Well, let me ask you, what's the mood of the defense in particular after the move to Marinelli and the team in general after these last couple of heartbreaking losses?
Well, I think you would tell more. Like, I think you would have been able to see a different mood if they would have won. I think there was some confidence that came out of it. But listen, the guys that talked after the game on Saturday were miserable, obviously, and you can understand. I mean, they had a faint glimmer of a hope of making the postseason, and then it goes away on that.
Yeah.
Like, you can understand why they were pretty down. I thought, today Vic Beasley spoke to the media, and I think he's in a different position where he's kind of deciding what his future is going to be, kind of auditioning a little bit for the Raiders. He was pretty upbeat, but I think that's a more of a personal. He has some goals personally that he wants to try to take care of and kind of showcase himself. You could kind of tell, like, there was a little bit of, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe this is fixable. Maybe it's salvageable. And I think more you can kind of tell from the offense that was a little bit excited about, hey, the defense kept us in the game. They gave it up at the end. They kept us in the game, and that's all the offense can really ask for, because the offense has been, good for most of the season. And I think that they believe that they can win games if you just stop somebody once in a while.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll see more of that next year. I hope. I really do. At the end of the day, with the Arnett and Isaiah Johnson thing, it's two really inexperienced players. One of them playing out of position. If you're going to hang your hat on defense, it's not going to be that play. It was disappointing, but again, given the context of what happened that week, it's understandable. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It still hurt a ton, but again, like I always go back to the offense in this discussion, because that's where you're looking for the points. That's where you're looking for the leadership and whatever else. I thought we could have done more earlier on in the game, but for it to come down to that sort of a play, especially after what happened with the Jets game,
It's like the Jets in reverse.
Yeah. I mean, every Raider fan at this point is prepared for that type of scenario, but it still
We're
hurts,
numb to
man.
the pain. That's what I got the the standard issue text messages from my asshole friends after that loss, and it's like, oh, how pissed are you? And it's like, I'm dead inside. I was pissed 2 weeks ago. Now it's just like standard operating procedure.
I said I was like a battered wife. Like, I've been beat so much, it's like, oh, I just start making excuses now. Like, they had a rough game. They played really well. It's like, I don't really care anymore. It happens.
So Adam, you were talking earlier a little bit about, the players trusting Gruden's process with Paul Gunther. Do you think Gruden is on the hot seat after what we've seen again towards
he
the
can't be.
season end?
John Gruden is the coach as long as John Gruden wants to be the coach.
Mark Davis
Like,
loves him. Just loves
He
him.
loves him, and he signed him to a ridiculous contract. He's got the job as long as he wants it. Now
They can still fire him, right?
Yeah, I feel like
I don't
there's
think
still
they've-
outs, right?
they'd have to pay him.
Yeah, that's
A lot.
guaranteed, bro. It's not like a player contract.
They would
That's
have to
money they owe.
negotiate. Yeah, they'd have to negotiate a buyout.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have to negotiate because they like say they fired him this year and they're like, all right, we owe you $70 million over the next 7 years. We're not going to pay you that, but they would negotiate some sort of buyout. Listen, it's John Gruden's job as long as he wants it. But my question is, how long does he want it? Like, I think there's a legitimate question. I'm going to ask him on Monday at his the post-mortem press
Ooh.
conference, as they call it. Are you back? Like, do you want to coach this team anymore? You came back. You're making all this money. There's no losses in the broadcast booth. He would get a massive contract to go back to TV. Why on earth do you want to do this? Why? I wouldn't. There's no chance I would want to keep this job. I would go right back to the booth. There's no reason to keep coaching and keep losing, keep taking the criticism. Guess what happens if you say something wrong in the booth? Nobody cares. They might say something on Twitter, then you move on. You have to hear it every day when you're the coach.
Sure.
Well, he gets 100 million reasons why he coaches. I mean, I
He'd
guess
get
that's gotta be
more.
part of it.
Look at the deal Romo got. He would get more to go back to broadcasting.
You think he would get
Crazy.
that crazy of a deal after shitting the bed with the Raiders, though?
I
Like,
don't
as-
think he
as
gets.
for the
I
deal?
don't think he'd get 17 like Romo. I think he'd get 12 or 13. Yeah, he'd get more
to
in the
work
booth.
to work 1 day a week, essentially.
Well, I mean, and think about like, and I'll tell you this, like, we stopped going to the facility 4 weeks ago when community spread got to a point where they're like, you can't go into the facility anymore. But until then, I was getting tested every day at the facility. The COVID testing, so that I can go in and go to practices every day. I will tell you this: if I got there for my test at 6 a.m., John Gruden's car was there. If I went back there to pick something up or do something at the facility like 8 p.m., John Gruden's car is there. Like, it never leaves. So like, that guy is just working all the time, and you know that he wants to win, he wants to get the job done, he wants to do this, he's passionate about it. But at some point, and maybe that's just me, that I'd be like, I'll take the check for no criticism. Maybe that says something about me, but I wouldn't keep doing this if I was him.
Well, you say that he's there a lot, but I mean, how involved was he with the defense? Was he? I mean, because we speculated about how often and how much input he had with the defense.
I would guess very little.
Yeah, that's what we did too.
He did, like I said, he trusted Gunther. Like, they were really close friends. They used to drive to the facility together when they lived up in the Bay Area. They were super close, and I think he just said, "Hey, go do your thing. I'm going to go do my thing on the offensive side, and we'll coach our side." He was basically an offensive coordinator that also, helped out with being the GM and everything else. So yeah, I think he kind of left it to Gunther a little bit to just do his own thing, and I think he'll do that with whoever the defensive coordinator is. I know who I think it should be. Like I said, there's other people. Rod Marinelli, I'm sure, is gonna, lobby to keep the job, and we already said, Wade Phillips is pushing for it. I think on Twitter he's tweeted about it a couple times. I would imagine every media person has received a text from Wade Phillips to lobby for him to be the coordinator. He really wants the job. But to me, I would be hiring Raheem Morris if it was my decision to make. I don't think he's getting the Atlanta job. Him and Gruden are very close. Gruden thinks very highly of him, and I don't know how many people have been paying attention to the Falcons. I know they saw him against the Raiders, but since he took over, that's been a completely different team. That dude can coach, and I would say that'd be a pretty good candidate to come in.
I'm just worried another team swoops him up as a head coach after what he did with the Falcons. That's what I'm worried about.
Oh, absolutely. Like, obviously, that's a very strong possibility. The Falcons could hire him, although I kind of think they're getting the enemy. But yeah, he's definitely a candidate right there with, Saleh and all these other guys. Like Joe Brady, I would think about hiring. He's only been a coordinator for 1 year with Carolina on the offensive side, but that dude has been successful everywhere. So there's going to be candidates for all these head coaching jobs, and if Morris doesn't get one, I would think he'd be right in line for the Raiders.
I love Morris. I love that call. How do you think he fits, though, in terms of schematically? Like, we obviously wouldn't have to do as much as we would with Wade Phillips going to a base 3-4, I'd assume. But
yeah,
how do you think that fits?
Well, I don't think they're tied to anything. I don't think they're married to anything. I think that's the other key. I think, like we said, I think that the defense is pretty autonomous with the Raiders, that they're just like we said with Gunther, hey, go do your thing. I think they do the same with Morris, whatever you want to do. And I don't think that they have anybody. Well, first of all, I don't think Raheem Morris would necessarily be tied to anything specific. I think he changes up quite a bit, but I also don't think there's any players that you would say, hey, we need to design our defense around this guy. Like, who's the guy that you say, hey, we really need this guy in the right, in the system defensively. We need a defense that fits this guy. I don't think there is one. I don't think there's that kind of talent on the defensive side that you need to say, hey, he needs to be in the system and we need to put this system in for him. I think you just play whatever defense you're going to play and find the pieces to fit there.
Yeah, these guys shit all over me when I said, what, we just got to draft the best player that's there. Like,
Yeah, we shit on Soto for a lot of reasons, mostly because of his internet connection. You mentioned
frame's incredible.
Oh, this is great. Amazing. That's gonna be our new profile pic. You're talking about how you're talking about like TV shows with the Raiders. What's the weirdest show that a Raider watches? You're like, I had no idea that Derek Carr loves The Bachelorette.
Wow, that's a good question. I got to think back on some of the stuff that we were watching last year. I'll say the most popular one, which I had to start. Well, I haven't watched enough of it, but I watched like a little bit of one just to get like the sense, because so many guys watch it, is Power. Like they freaking love. I didn't know if I could curse. Sorry. They love that show.
Let it fly,
and, like,
man. Let it fly.
you would go in there, like you would go in the locker room, and there would be like arguments, and you'd be starting to figure out like what is going on, like what is happening. I don't understand why they're so angry, and like what's happening here. And actually, the guy I would kind of talk to the most when there was like a lot of commotion is AJ Cole, the punter. He's an awesome dude. He's so great. And I would just be like, like, AJ, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know. These dudes are just arguing about power, and I can't figure any of it out. And I'm like, okay,
the token white guy's trying to get in on the power discussion.
And he's a punter. He's white and he's a punter.
Yeah. But his I can't wait to see how the lockers are situated here. But his locker in Oakland, in Alameda at the facility, was over by the receivers and the DBs. And that was kind of really where the discussion would be centered. And so he would just be like in the middle of it all. And I'd be like, okay, like now I'm caught up at least a little bit on this. So that was a good one. But yeah, it would just be, I use TV shows as an example, but it would be mostly like you just figure out what guys are into. Like I said, talk UFC, a couple guys like baseball actually, which is kind of weird. I was kind of thrown off by that one. So you would talk some baseball, whatever. Just whatever. You just kind of figure out what topics guys are comfortable with and what they would be more interested in talking about than football, because you don't get very much if you just walk up and you're like, hey, what's going on with the coordinator? Like, what do you think?
Give me a scoop now.
Yeah, tell me something that I don't know, please.
Yeah,
but yeah. You just gotta talk and kind of get into their world a little bit.
Who's the coolest Raider to hang out with? Like, who's just like the coolest guy?
Oh man, I mean, I tend to trend toward Jalen Richard.
Okay.
Fun guy, but also like he gets it. Like, always willing to talk. If there's a controversial subject, something like that, that you're going to be able to go up to him and just be like, hey man, what's going on with this? And whether it's on the record or off the record, like, and I'm not saying he'll like spill stuff, but he'll just be like, hey, can't really talk about those things, but it's just this.
Mm-hmm.
And he always is understanding of what your job is. And he's always cool, returns texts, that kind of thing, like all the time. So I've always loved dealing with Jalen Richard. I'm just trying to think, like, Zay Jones is pretty cool, which I know he had a little bit of weird trouble down in LA a couple years ago. But I've always thought he's really cool person to just kind of talk to and hang out and be around. And some of the offensive linemen, Gabe Jackson, even though he's quiet, doesn't really say much, just a good dude. I like those guys. I would like to see what they're like away from football, because like, Jackson and Hudson, those guys are like so quiet, but you get the sense that they're just really good guys that are are just cool to be around and hang out with. And I want to say it was Antonio Brown last year, but that's kind of a mess.
That would be a party, hanging out with Antonio Brown. You'll end up like pantsless in Tijuana or something.
But yeah, but you get skeeted on your back though. You don't want that.
That's true. I will say, as awful as that was last year. So I went and lived in Napa for 5 weeks or whatever it was for training camp last year. Every day, like, you would wake up and just look at your phone and be like, what now? Like, what now?
Yeah, it was
and
bad.
in the moment for those 5 weeks, because you would just get a text from either the PR staff of the Raiders or one of the other players' agents or somebody, like, you're not going to believe what's going on today. and you'd just be like, oh God, like what's happening? And in the moment, it sucked. It sucked.
I would have thought he was a writer's dream, especially if you don't care about the Raiders, right? Like us fans are like, God damn it, he's imploding this team. But like,
No.
he's just content for days.
He is, and that's why, like, looking back, it was cool and it was great to have him around because you got to, you got some of those stories all the time. But like, you want to tell a story, right? Like there's stories you want to tell of like, hey, I want to sit and talk to whatever Tyrell Williams today, or I want to go talk to whoever, right? Like I want to tell this guy's story. You're like, oh no, I got to write about Antonio Brown not liking his helmet today, so that's going to be what my focus is and my feature is. So like in the moment, it sucked because there's so many other things you wanted to do and you couldn't. But at the same time, looking back, you're like, what a time to like cover this team of just complete chaos every single day. It was nuts.
Yeah.
You must have some pretty special insight. I mean, this is one of the things that the three of us really don't get the opportunity to see it all that you have insight on, Adam, is just like the locker room dynamics, not only with coaches, but also the actual players themselves. So I was lucky enough to go to training camp last year in Napa as well. It was my first time there. It was always a dream of mine, like just to see the behind the scenes.
He just went there for wine tasting. He didn't even watch the training camp.
He wanted to see Hummer Renfro.
I was there for the grinders, man. I was there for the grinders. The great wine in Napa. But Eric Harris was a guy that I began to see why coaches loved him so much. He was, he's so vocal. He was a vocal leader. And that's not something that fans really have that sort of insight on unless you're at the games in the front row.
Yeah.
So like, who are the players that you wouldn't expect to necessarily leading from behind the scenes,
I mean, that's an interesting one. And I think part of his is that he's an older player, but somebody who's like been through so much, like he had to fight and scrap and claw his way up there. And, he was somebody that was he's not a first round pick. He's a guy, went to Canada, and I think he worked at a potato chip factory, if I remember correctly. Like there was some weird job that he had.
Some crazy story. Yeah.
Dream job.
Yes.
For you, Soto.
So guys like that, guys that have had a little bit of time to be around the league and to try to, get to that level, I think are the guys that are kind of going to emerge in the way that you're talking about. LaMarcus Joyner actually is kind of, similar position, I guess, in the secondary, but another guy who just has been around for a long time and, little dude, but, he speaks much, his words carry more weight than some of the other guys. I think, a guy like Nick Kwiatkowski has come in and been, that position kind of calls for that leadership, but he's kind of been that guy that's been able to do that. And then, I think on the offensive side, there's zero question, and it's not a surprise. Like you kind of were looking, I think, for guys that you can be surprised by. If Rodney Hudson says a word, everybody shuts the hell up and listens to everything that he says.
That's
and it's
so
not,
sweet.
It's not often. It's
so
not
gangster.
often that he talks. It's not often that he talks, but when he does, it means something. Like that dude gets so.
Give us an
much
example. Did you witness an example?
It's more like so when you're like if you're watching, you see on the practice field, like he's a guy that doesn't talk. Like, you hear all these guys talking, chirping, whatever, and like he might go 3 days without saying a word, but then all of a sudden he starts talking, and then like everyone is just like focused. Like, what does he say? Let's hear what he says.
Yeah.
In locker room, he never talked. Never. He's like the only guy that would just like he'd come in, get his stuff, sit down. If he has to talk to a media person, he answers their questions, whatever. But then he's gone. Like he's just not a talker. And again, that's around us. So a lot of times, I'll use this caveat because you've been around athletes a long time too, RJ. There's guys that you think are really quiet because when you talk to them, they don't really want to say a whole lot because you're media and you're just like whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, if you're not around, the guys will be like, no, that guy is a prankster. He's a jokester. He's always talking. He's always doing something. We have started change into another Vegas sport here. But we have the Golden Knights here, and I was covering them for a while in between UFC and the Raiders. I was on the Golden Knights beat. So there's a guy, Nick Holden. He's a defenseman, a veteran guy on the team, who like you would go in and he's like the quietest dude, incredibly respectful. But like you'd ask him like, hey, last night you guys did a great job on the penalty kill. He'd be like, yeah, we did our best, and we tried, and we did whatever we could, and just like super super quiet. And so I always assumed, hey, that's who Nick Holden is. And then all the other guys on the team would be like, no, dude, that guy is out of control. He's like wild, man. He's crazy. Like whenever you guys aren't here, like he is nuts. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Okay. And then one day I was around the team and I was the only media person there. And he was kind of like, he was just so loud and boisterous and around. And I was like, okay, that is weird. Like I don't get where that switch is. So like when I'm saying these, like who the guys that I notice or the guys that I think are a certain way, doesn't necessarily mean they are when we're not around. But that's just what we observe there. So
that's how Gruden's going to get his meetings to everyone shut up. It's like, if you guys don't shut up, I'm going to bring Adam Hill in here right now, and I know you guys will stop acting up.
Yeah, I don't think they would care. Yeah.
He like Belichick to you, like to the media, he's just like real, like real dry.
Yeah.
But you see like some interviews with him off, away from the team, and he's super funny.
I mean, is he, or do we judge him on, like I'm saying Belichick
sliding scale?
Do we judge him on a scale of like if he says something like he puts his dog on a chair and we're like, that Belichick's hilarious? Like, okay, it's the normal. Just because Belichick's never funny doesn't mean he gets a lower bar for humor.
Oh, I was trying to make that for myself too. Oh, no.
Okay.
Adam saw right through you, Soto.
Damn
it doesn't work on him.
Jesus. Well, I brought up Belichick. He's one of the coaches, the defensive guys at least, that shut down the Raiders. Like the offense was the issue that game. New England and also Raheem Morris with Atlanta. I mean, how predictable is Gruden? I mean, those are two guys that know him. I mean, how predictable is Gruden with his play calling?
I mean, I feel like he's getting a little better, but every time I think he's getting better, it feels like it kind of sets back. You have to listen. I doubted the Gruden experiment with him coming back, mostly because he was successful, 15, 20 years ago. The game is totally different now. He definitely has, the grinder mentality, the old school. He's definitely got that in his head. And I just think the game has evolved so much. So I doubted that he would come in and really make a huge impact on offense. So to your point, how predictable is he? I think he is very predictable, but at the same time, like their offensive numbers have been really good. They were good last year. They were great this year. So just because I think he's predictable and just because we think he's an old school guy, doesn't necessarily mean he is, because it works. You can't really doubt the fact that he's been successful at the offense. They've been, scoring points. Now, I feel like they're pretty predictable in the red zone. And in the red zone, they've been pretty bad.
Yeah.
And they've tried. I saw stat the other day. It was circulating on Twitter, so you guys might have seen it. But they have set the mark in the last 30 years in the NFL for most field goals inside of 30 yards in a season. So I mean,
I actually pulled that stat.
Yeah,
18.
They're kicking way too often inside the 12, 13 yard line. You can't do that. Like he's been hesitant to go for it. They're second in the league in fourth down conversions. Actually, they might be first now after.
That's why Daniel Carlson has like insane numbers, because he's making like 22-yard field goals every game.
He's leading the league in points.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Is he really?
Yeah,
he has 2 missed field goals and 1 missed extra point, and one of those field goals was the Cleveland fucking left hook from hell kick that was started outside the right upright and went three freaking rows into the stands.
And one was a missed extra point this week that was kind of relevant.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think he's he's an offensive guy, and he's been successful as an offensive coach for a long time. I just feel like there needs to be more creativity in the red zone, and I think there needs to be more aggressiveness going for it on fourth down. Like I said, I think they're second or third least amount of attempts on fourth down, but the highest percentage. Maybe you should try to going for it more.
What do you attribute like the issues on the red zone to, though? I mean, what is it? More Gruden? Is it more Carr? Like, I mean,
I do think so. I think there's a little bit of both, and I think for one, I think that's where maybe some of the lack of creativity or the lack of ingenuity from Gruden, the maybe things that worked 20 years ago that might not work now. Maybe that's showing up a little bit, but I also think one of the criticisms of Carr, which I think has been fair, even though he's been great. And every time you say, hey, he's been great, but this little thing, all the Carr fans just get furious at you and have to deal with that all the time. But he's had a great season, but I think some of it is showing up again that he doesn't like to take a lot of chances. And, that has been successful. Like, hey, dump it down, let your receiver, let your running back, catch it for 3 yards and run for 7 or 8 more. That's great. Dump it down to like Darren Waller, let him make a play, go down the field. That's fine. But then when you get inside the 20, if you're not taking chances, the field is so shrunk in there that you've got to try to force the ball in there every now and then. And if you're not willing to do that, oftentimes you're going to see the drive stall a little bit. While it works really good between the 20s, once you get inside there, you've got to every once in a while try to force some tight windows.
And the defense is not stopping anybody, so you need touchdowns. You don't need threes. You need sevens because you're giving up sevens.
You do, but they're actually, and I saw that the other day, and I don't have my numbers in front of me. I wish I would have these because I was doing some research the other day about average starting field position, and it actually hasn't been that bad. You would think as bad as the defense has been, it's almost always a kickoff. It's almost always a touchback.
Mhm.
You would think that their starting field position would be like at the bottom of the league, but it hasn't been. They've actually had some decent starting field position on average this year. So, but you're right. You do have to know, and that puts pressure on the offense too. Like, hey, we don't just have to get the ball down the field. We have to score touchdowns every time, or else, we're just going to get blown out because the defense is going to give a touchdown. So that becomes a little bit more difficult to score when you have all that pressure every time.
I struggle with the idea that we listened to Gruden talk about the red zone offense all offseason last year. What do we got to improve on? We got to improve in the red zone.
Damn.
And then we start the year and we're not only just red fucking hot on third down, but also really, really good first drive of the game and then also in the red zone. And to see it just drop off like this, obviously we start asking questions now. And I feel like every single week we talk about his personnel mismanagement, Adam, where it's, Witten versus Moreau is obviously the one that's getting the most press right now. It's really hard to justify. He's such an incredible red zone target. He looks like an incredible combo tight end. Really bright future in front of him after a really good rookie season and coming back off of injury. And we're dialing up designed offensive looks in the red zone to Witten at the expense of other guys. And it's really difficult to get behind Gruden in those scenarios. The same thing can be said about Josh Jacobs, the running game, but also getting him involved in the passing game. We just haven't done the basics well enough. And it's really disappointing because it was a point of focus last offseason.
Yeah, I mean, they focus on it, but like, it's tough to come up with it. I was actually trying to, as you were talking, looking through some of my Gruden transcripts, trying to find all the times he's been asked about the red zone recently and what he said. Monday, I don't know if you guys noticed, he kind of started off his press conference with a joke, which I don't know if fans would really go for it. So the first question of the press conference on Monday was, after looking at the film, what was your biggest issue in the red zone on offense? Because again, against Miami, he struggled inside the red zone. And he said, well, the last one, we took a knee. Maybe not the
Touché.
right. I like it. I
don't mind it.
I laughed.
I
laughed at it. Yeah, I mean, trust me, I laughed. I thought it was hilarious. But in retrospect, like, you are dealing with some pretty serious issues inside the red zone. But he said, like, he doesn't. This is the kind of answers that he gives, and you never really get inside his head a little bit. He said, we had a good drive on the second possession and scored a touchdown. 2 third and goals at the 5. I just have to do a better job of trying to find the right play. But the Dolphins are a good defense, and I think we scored enough points to win the game, which is kind of true. Like, if you look back, they said you scored enough points. Your defense needs to get a stop at the end, but you also understand that your defense doesn't get stops very often, so you probably have to score more. It's been a recurring issue. You're right, and I think that's got to be very frustrating for John Gruden. I can't even count how many times he's been asked about their red zone offense, and as we said, the kicking the field goals. I would say part of it is certainly you have to be more aggressive in your play calling in the red zone. You have to be more creative. I don't know if you saw the Bills game on Monday night. But Brian Daboll is just a genius offensive coordinator. It really shows up in the red zone. Like, he's got, how many times does he have, tight end pretending to block, kind of laying down and then crossing the formation where everybody else goes right, tight end goes left. You just got guys wide open. Like, you very rarely see the Raiders run some play where you just get an open receiver just standing there on his own. And you watch around the league, like, all these teams are coming up with like creative ways to use different players and get guys involved. And Foster Moreau did it a couple times last year to the point where he was able to, really find some space and to try to, pretend to block, open up into the flat, get wide open. There's different scenarios like that all around the place. They don't really have a whole lot of those plays, and they haven't this year. Part of it, I think, is Josh Jacobs is such a good player, such a dynamic running back, but he runs so hard and so physical every single time he touches the ball that I can't even tell you how many times I'm just sitting there watching the game like, wait, why is Josh Jacobs? Oh, he's in the tent. Oh, he's talking to the trainers. And I don't think it's a knock on Josh Jacobs. Like, I think he's really, really tough. He's played through a lot. But like, when you have that style and you're just hurt all the time, those yards are real tough inside the red zone. And if your body's beat down in the third quarter and you've been going through the battle all game, you're going to be a little step slower. And that has affected them, I think, a little bit. The creativity, the aggressiveness. I think, how often do they have a 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and other teams go for it and they end up scoring touchdowns? Raiders kick field goals. They make that decision. They kind of surrender the drive and kick a field goal. So I would think the aggressiveness and the creativity are things that certainly need to be addressed. But listen, we talked about this last season. Like, I think it was one of the few times Gruden actually talked to the media during the shutdown back around the draft time. I think the first question he was asked about, what have you done about working on the red zone this offseason? He's like, oh, we got some stuff, coming up with some stuff. Haven't really seen much of it.
No, he doesn't.
1-yard shots to Jason Witten. There you go. That's my genius.
I don't get it. I don't get the fascination. I don't understand. Every time I see him trotting on the field, I'm like, okay.
You know what it starts with? I think it starts with the running game. I think that was one of the biggest differences between the beginning of the season and the end of the season, especially in short yardage type scenarios that we're talking about on 4th and 1, 4th and 2. If a defense doesn't really respect your ability to line up man for man and get those hard yards inside, you don't really have a lot of flexibility all of a sudden with your play action fakes, with spreading them out wide. There's masterful offenses, what Andy Reid's done with the Chiefs. There's all these creative offensive coordinators. But I think a team has to, first of all, respect the fact that you're not going to be able to go straight up the middle for 2 yards, which with our offensive line and Josh Jacobs, and even with Ingold leading the way, you have to lean on that in short yardage scenarios. And we couldn't. We kept getting stuffed.
Well, to that point, I was trying to find the numbers again right here. I'm trying to remember last year. Ingold was like a 4th down specialist last year, and they just fell in love with it. And I think that goes to the creativity point too. Of at some point, okay, Alec Ingold, I think, converted like the first 9 4th and 1s. I think it was 6 runs, 3 little passes out in the flat. And so all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, so they're going to go to Ingold on 4th down. And then they're like, yeah, we're just going to go to Ingold on 4th down. Well, like, where's the play off of that? Where, all right, we're going to leak Ingold out and then run a tight end to the other side. Like, they just said, okay, Ingold is our 4th down guy. We're going to go to that. Just like they've gone to, all right, Hunter Renfro's the 3rd down guy, so we're going to throw to him on 3rd down, and it's effective a lot. But like, you need to take that, to take your offense to the next level to get more dynamic. You have to take that and say, hey, everybody knows this is what we're going to do, so we're gonna get you all going that way. We're gonna go somewhere else and be creative with it. And I just don't think they've done that enough.
Yeah, they think we're going to go to Jason Witten in the red zone, but really we're going to give him a clipboard and put him on the sideline with a hat on.
That's what we're not going to do. We're going to avoid going to Darren Waller at all costs.
Foster Moreau.
God damn it, Adam.
Foster Moreau had 5 red zone touchdowns last year. It's like,
to be fair, he was hurt this year. And it was a long road to recovery for Foster Moreau. And I know, like, listen, at this point in the season, he should be playing a lot more. Early in the season, he was still getting back to full strength. And so I kind of got, all right, the Jason Witten thing and play him. But I think now it's just hey, Jason Witten is kind of my friend in Gruden's mind. Hey, Jason Witten's my friend. He wants to play. Let's let him play. Like, that's kind of the detriment of your team a little bit. And to that end, like, I don't get, and we'll see what he actually does, if this is just lip service or if he does it. When John Gruden was asked about playing some different guys this week and, getting a head start on evaluation for the offseason, right? If you don't know what you have in some of these players, then how are you going to judge them in the offseason if you don't play them? And he said, we're going to do everything we can to put the best players on the field and win this game. Why?
Wow.
Why?
Wow.
I don't understand. Now, he also later joked and said, who are these young players that you want to play? We're playing young players all the time, which is somewhat true too. But then you look and see, like, they have a ton of players that are over 27 that are taking a lot of snaps. I think they have the highest percentage of players over 27 taking snaps this year on a regular basis. So, like, yeah, they have a lot of young players, but they do still have a lot of old players too. And I don't know why those guys are playing. You know what you have in them. Like, there's no chance I would play Derek Carr this week. Like, what you have in Derek Carr. You understand what Derek Carr is. You don't need to evaluate him for the offseason. Do you know what you have in Marcus Mariota? I don't think you do, because he played one game where the team wasn't prepared for a running quarterback because they were prepared for Carr, and he played really well. He also had a terrible training camp because he was injured. His mind was not right. When he came back, he still wasn't right. Then he had a couple good practices. He plays one game. Okay, what do you have? So either you play him in the last game and he's awful, and you're like, okay, we need to figure out something at the backup quarterback spot, or you play him and he's great,
Trade
then you either-
value.
then you run up his trade value,
Yeah.
right? So if somebody's like, hey, that's a starting quarterback, now you can trade him. But what good is he on the bench for the last game? 0. And what's your goal? Why do you care about winning? It doesn't matter.
You've opened up a can of worms there, my friend.
Oh no.
Rory's so triggered right now.
It's so triggered. I'm of the opinion that it's really difficult to sit and talk about this offense for the next, I don't know, 6 months. If Carr wasn't to start this game and finish this game, his last game for us, we went 0-10. We're 0-11 on third down. We still couldn't move the ball. We still couldn't do shit in the red zone. That's a horrible way to end the year. So, I hate the idea as well of Mariota coming out and having an absolutely dominant game. And then all of a sudden, we've got this back and forth again. Should we start Mariota? Should we start Carr? We know Carr is going to be Gruden's guy going into next year, no matter what. So kind of like the Antonio Brown scenario.
I don't know about
You don't
that
think
either.
so?
I don't. I listen.
He had a career high passer rating this season.
And 6 of 7 years, no playoffs.
Yeah.
That's the
It's
defense.
it's not on him. It's
Yeah.
not on. Agreed. It's not on him. I'm not saying Derek Carr isn't the right person, and I'm not saying Derek Carr is going to be gone. But we know what John Gruden has felt about quarterbacks for his whole career. You know, the old saying, he doesn't marry quarterbacks, he dates them. Like, I think you could see the relationship getting to a point, and this is the year where the contract it's doable in terms of getting rid of the contract.
Yeah.
I could see him making a move. Now, if you made me bet who's the quarterback day one next year, I'm absolutely betting on Derek Carr. Like, he's clearly the favorite, but I don't think he's like minus 800. He's like it's like a minus 250, minus 300. Very likely to be the quarterback day one next year. But if something was going on in the offseason, somebody's available, you're looking around saying, okay, maybe this would be interesting as a quarterback. And I think they might get offers too. You don't think Bill Belichick would want to take a look at Derek Carr? You don't think that maybe even I think Frank Reich is going to get Carson Wentz, but a team like the Eagles, if Phillip Rivers is, or excuse me, the Colts, if Phillip Rivers is done, like there's gonna be teams maybe that are interested in what can you get for him. Like I said, I think it's Carr, but I don't think it's a slam dunk 100% that it's going to be Carr. Now, I also thought last year that Carr was probably going to be done, and certainly was wrong about that. And I don't want this to come across as like a bashing on Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr has been really good. I just think it's one of those cases of like John Gruden getting to the point of like, all right, I need to do something different. I need to change this up, and it's worked. The offense has been really good. Carr had a great season, no question about it.
Gruden needs some strange. That's Gruden.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Thank you for being classy about it.
I know. I know how to bring the bar down lower, like a Bill Belichick joke. Last one. True or false? Derek Carr has or is wearing eyeliner.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh shit.
There's some photo evidence that's pretty damning in that department, Adam. You've been closer to him than we have.
There is, and I think he was asked about this and just kind of chuckled, didn't answer.
Guy
That's a
liner.
guilty
I
answer.
don't-
Yeah.
Listen.
That means you are. It's like when you ask a chick if her boobs are real. If she's like laughs it off, that means they're fake. Because if they're real, you're like, oh no, they're real. Got them from my mama, 100% El Natural.
Yeah, they're
No
real
way.
expensive.
If it's anything other than that, bolt-ons.
I don't
Damn.
I don't know enough about makeup, I guess, to really give. I have seen the same things you have, where I look and I'm like, is he?
Goodbye,
Is he? I'm not sure. I'm more thrown off all the time by the over oiling of the arms at practice.
Rolled up sleeves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You don't want
Yeah.
no farmer tan, baby.
it's clearly he's just flexing, and it like, shouldn't you be just worried about practicing? Like, who cares about who's looking at your arms? Like, this is ridiculous. I don't understand
hate
that
that.
aspect.
Maybe he
I don't
oiled
hate
up
that.
the arms to take the subject away from his eyes. The guy liner, he's like, oh shit, I got to better come with something else. Everyone's onto my makeup.
Why wouldn't you just stop wearing it then? If you're trying to take the attention away from it, if you're wearing the guy liner, you want the attention on your eyes, right? You don't want to take the attention away.
You see, I've had this conversation a million times with girls. They're like, oh, I'm going to get a boob job. I want it to look natural. It's like, why? If you're
Then
going to
why?
get, like, make them awesome, right?
Go
Like,
for it.
why would you spend $10,000 to look like you didn't spend $10,000? You know what
Make
I mean?
them look like 10 grand titties.
So maybe Derek Carr's that way. He's like, oh, it's going to look real natural. No one's going to know. They're just going to think I have beautiful lashes. Like, no, dog, you're wearing guy liner.
I mean,
Yeah.
it could just be natural. He could just have naturally glowy
That's
eyes.
why
I don't know,
asked.
son. I don't know,
That's why I
son.
asked you. I don't think it is, but that's why I'm trying to get to the bottom of this.
Listen, these
Big J
are the
journalism.
hard hitting stories that I should be pursuing.
Mhm.
I have failed clearly in my job, and
I
still gotta
blame your
win.
editor. Your editor should be like, Adam, I need you to get to the bottom of this.
You still got a week.
Yeah.
yeah. Instead of yes,
That's
well,
your
actually,
off-season
Cars-
homework, Adam. Figure out the
Cars-
makeup habits of the whole roster.
So he will do next Monday. He'll do like a season in review. That would be a good time maybe to throw it in.
There you go.
I mean,
The
the
problem
problem
with
here's the
that
thing.
guy liner.
There's been slanderless claims from the Autumn Windbags. Can you confirm
That guy
these rumors?
Soto's a dick.
This is another problem though with like not being around. So like if Derek Carr was just in the locker room, you could just be like, bro, what's going on with the and you can even look in the locker, see if you see any evidence of eyeliner somewhere in the locker.
Adam Hill sees eyeliner in Derek Carr's locker room.
But yes, but
Like,
now that
oh,
we have to do it on the Zoom, it's like now everybody's gonna see you ask the question, and the fans are watching live too, which throws you off sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for that Twitter smoke because I've taken so much of it already. I'm like ready for the off season to just kind of chill, but maybe I'll throw it out there. Depends. Maybe if they win. If they win,
You've
I can
already
do it.
had a bunch, man. You might as well. Shit. Like,
Oh, so much, so much.
might as well. I look at your Twitter feed. I was like, God damn.
Oh, well, and I have to deal with. I'm a former Bills obsessed fan. And
Former. Picked a weird time to stop.
no, I didn't. So it goes. There's a lot of factors here, but Tyrod Taylor was like my favorite player ever. Like I just loved that everything about that guy and what he did. Taking the Bills to the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, and then sitting in that stadium as I'd go to games and just hear all of the racial epithets hurled at him, and you'd be like, dude, that guy's taking you to the playoffs. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are we doing here?
Mhm.
And I just wasn't comfortable with like, the next year they bring in Josh Allen, who I said would never be good, so I'm looking brilliant on that one. But they bring him in, and like people said, oh, Tyrod Taylor runs too much, and then Josh Allen is the least accurate quarterback in the league. But they're like, yeah, but look how good he is as a runner. And I'm like, so because he's white, he's allowed to run? Like, this is how we're dealing with things now?
Again,
And I
it's
was
that
like,
sliding scale. Like he's fast for a white guy. There you go.
So I was like,
Low
I just can't do this. Like, I don't want to be a fan of a team anymore. And maybe covering a team kind of soured me on fandom as well. But I was like, that just made me uncomfortable. Like, if you don't like the guy, fine. Like, you don't have to sit there and shout N-bombs at the guy because he doesn't stand up straight in the pocket and throw balls like you want him to. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me.
So
I
you
was like,
started
I'm not-
covering the Raiders, who have whose fans have a phenomenal reputation as very upstanding individuals.
Sure. But like I look at it differently. Covering a team, I look at it as different than supporting a team. And by the way, I've like is the reputation that Raiders fans have. And by the way, I did get beat up in the black hole when I was 22. That was
really
fun. Oh yeah.
It's a badge of honor, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us the story. Like, what were you wearing a Bills jersey? Is that why?
Yeah. So I was like I said, I was a Bills fan, and I have a Raiders fan friend who had tickets in the black hole in Oakland, and would fly up from Vegas every weekend. And he's like, hey, I will give you my seat, my extra seat, if you wear a Bills jersey and you're obnoxious.
Some friend.
Yeah.
He wanted to see you get your shit kicked in.
Yeah. And he said, and you're obnoxious. Like, be a fan like you always are.
Did you fuck his girlfriend?
So, like, I kind of was under the impression, like, oh, you're a regular. So, like, I'm going to be sitting with you.
Nope.
So, it'll be okay. It's not going to be too crazy. So, he gets so drunk that he's like he's sleeping in the stands. It's fine.
Yep.
I went to the bathroom.
More and more.
Yeah, I went to the bathroom in the Coliseum, which is just an adventure.
Yeah.
And as I'm coming back, one of the guys from Black Hole's like, "You're not coming back to your seat. Like, that's it. You're done. Like, go sit somewhere else." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I told the security guy, I was like, "Hey, my seat's down there, and this guy's not letting me go." And he goes, "Yeah, it's for the best. Don't sit there." Like, okay,
we can't protect you.
So I said, I found a new place to sit back. It wasn't a whole lot of people there. There was plenty of open seating in other sections. So I sat somewhere else. And then after the game, the Raiders won, and I believe they won. They had lost the first 4 games of the year. They won this game to maybe go 1-4 or 2-4, whatever it was. And I'm getting so much shit on the way out. Wearing the Bills jersey from the same people that I saw in the black hole, whatever. And they're just like screaming at me. And so I held up. I was like, "You're still 1-4, 1-4." Just holding it up, 1-4.
You were asking for
and then,
it.
yeah, for
Get
sure.
me pissed off right now, man.
And then I felt somebody like running up behind me. It just kicked me as hard as they could in the back of my leg, and I went down and then just got pummeled on the ground on that
holy shit.
the tunnel, the overpass that goes from the stadium to the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so bad, like I was so disoriented. I got
man.
on the BART and I went the wrong way. I went into San Francisco instead of going out
Oh,
to
man.
my family's house in the East Bay where I was going to go stay.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was ugly, but I deserved it. Like I wasn't like
Yeah.
I didn't get up and like, how could these people do this? I'm like, yeah, that's what I deserve. I was being obnoxious. I was drunk and being obnoxious. What are they supposed to do? So I don't hold it against them. And I've had really good interactions with Raiders fans since I've been covering the team in terms of, yeah, sometimes they take shots at you on Twitter or whatever, but like when you see them in person somewhere, not that we can see anybody anywhere anymore. But last year being up there, I lived in Oakland basically for the year. I've had nothing but good interactions with people.
That's I want to get beat up in the black hole. Like that just feels like a badge of honor. You know what I mean?
Well, technically I was gone from the black hole, but
That's true.
I started in the black hole. So
The black holeites are the ones that got him.
Yeah. Black hole natives.
yeah, they found me and I deserved it.
His name's Adam Hill. You can check him out at the Las Vegas Review Journal. And if you want to harass him on Twitter, you go to at Adam Hill LVRJ.
Give them all your smoke.
Thanks, Adam.
All the smoke.